Hey class, this is the video lecture for Tuesday, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo, or you might see this beforehand. Hope you're doing Taco Tuesday on your home. If you're legal, you have some tequila. Sucks that we can't be outside. So I'm uploading this video early because I want you guys to look at it if you want to get a head start on the paper. Today we're going to be talking about violence in the media. Let me share my screen here and get into the lesson. One of the more interesting lessons we have of the semester. Hope everybody's doing good, even though I just spoke to you. All right. So, all right. Is there too much violence in the media? So why do I have this Mortal Kombat game here? So this was the first Mortal Kombat game, and it was riddled with violence at the time. Especially when, I don't know if any of you played this game. It's basically like a Street Fighter type game. Two players fight, and at the end, the one who wins, it says finish him, and you can do a combo move and do like really graphic things like pull their heart out, freeze them, body parts. And it was subject to tons and tons of debate and things like that. So I'll show you guys here. There's actually a Wikipedia page just for all the controversies. And it went before congressional hearings, and that's why if you see video games now, this is the reason why video games have ratings like TV shows and movies. And it's funny because one of the co-creators said he wouldn't let his 10-year-old son play the game. I remember playing this in arcades when I was young, but it didn't affect me. I didn't want to have to punch somebody's heart out or anything. We'll get into that. And if that was violent, you could imagine the new version, as you can see here, is super violent. And let's go back. So if you guys want to examine video games and violence, Mortal Kombat is a great place to start. And there's tons of things, countries banning the game, in the Wikipedia page, controversies on Mortal Kombat. So since you're not in class, let me know in the discussion. Do you think violence in the media has any effect? And what so? Any examples? Does violence in the media have any effect on you? Have you ever, has any of you guys ever become violent due to something that you've seen in the media, or aggressive because of something that you've seen in the media? Have you ever been triggered by something? Let me know in the discussion. I can't think of anything that I can recall off the top of my head. And I think, yes, violence in the media has an effect on certain people. It doesn't have an effect on everybody, and we'll see as we go to discussion some viewpoints. So people are always complaining that there is too much violence in the media. This happens especially when a major event happens, like a mass shooting. So we have tons of mass shootings in the US. Actually, this is the first time in years that a mass shooting hasn't happened because everybody's home with coronavirus. So we're gonna look at not ASAP Rocky, Sylvester Stallone. What's he got to say about this? Could you get a more violent title than Bullet to the Head?
He's obviously still got it. He's 66 years old, but Sly Stallone still gets and sets the bar for action movies. Stallone gives us some classic, high-octane fight scenes in this new movie, Bullet to the Head. It's pretty wild. Chubis and I just spoke with Sly. He's taking on his enemies with a vengeance here, and he's also weighing in on one of the hottest debates in Hollywood today. Do violent films fuel violence in real life? Obviously a super sensitive subject these days. Chubis and I, Nichelle Turner, back to me from Hollywood tonight. So, Nichelle, as you would well expect from Sly Stallone, he's not holding back one bit on this.
No, not holding back, and he certainly isn't slowing down. Now, of course, like you said, AJ, this is the topic that everyone in Hollywood and around the country is talking about right now. But Sly Stallone says that doing these classic action films, basically they're just in his DNA. You know, he's been an action movie star for decades now, and he says that he knows all too well about the influence of film. Take a listen to what he said.
Do films have an impact on people? Yeah, they do. Unfortunately, people are disturbed people. If they don't find it here, they're going to find it somewhere else. They're going to find something to serve their bloodlust or their delusion. So I don't think it pushes them any further over the edge. I mean, there's definitely a debate. You could debate that pro and con to the end of time. Did Rocky make a few guys, white guys, go out and get their brains punched in to be fighters? Yeah, it did. It actually did. And so people are influenced by films, no question about it.
You know, Eddie Murphy did a comedy bit about that, about Rocky influencing people to believe they could actually go out and win a fight when they really couldn't. Now,
So was there any movie or scene that made you want to do something like, I don't know, something crazy or violent? I'll tell you guys my experience as a kid with my cousins later on. So people say so much violence has an influence on certain people, particularly children and criminals, and it increases the chance they will be violent. People say the media needs to protect society and curb violence. So when we look at the violence in the media, yes, there's tons and tons of violence in the media, but it's not just what you think. An analysis found half of all primetime and weekend shows for kids had some violence. There were 6 acts of violence per hour in all shows. The problem is our conception of what is violence in the media. So key definitions from the book. What does it have to take to be violent? Does the act have to be directed towards a person? Gang members swing a bat at a car and totally destroy it. I don't know if you guys remember, maybe you were too young. A few years ago, something crazy happened where there was a bunch of motorcycle guys on the highway. And these people, they still do this, the dirt bikes, the motorcycles, they would crowd around cars. And so what happened was the guy, it was an SUV, he felt threatened. They got into like this road rage incident. So the guy like hit one of the persons and drove away. And people were saying, yeah, that's scary. You have all these like gang-ish looking motorcycle people, and I'm with my family. What am I supposed to do? He hit one of them and ran away. It was a big thing. But yeah, that can seem scary. And at the time, if those people are surrounding you, does the act have to be committed by a person? We'll see a famous movie later in this class that would scare you and has scared a lot of people. Does the act have to be intentional? Does the act have to actually result in harm? Tom and Jerry is one of the most violent cartoons. You may not even realize it. Does the violence have to be that what we see? It could happen in another scene or not really shown. Does it have to be physical? It could be verbal. What about fantasy? 100 men fighting morph into a giant creature and stomp out a building. What about humorous portrayals? So the public's conception of violence is lower than researchers. If you answered more yes, then you have a broad definition of violence and more than likely to see more acts of violence in the media. On the average, there's 30 acts of violence per hour on television. If you answered more no, then you have a narrow sense of violence and think the media is less violent. Each kind of violence has its own risk. So graphicness, there's a focus on graphicness when it comes to the debate on violence in media. People think that a car chase and gunfire is not more violent than someone being shot on film. It's equally violent. It's a violent scene. One really graphic scene in the movie is likely to trigger the idea that the movie is violent versus a movie with constant violence like shooting explosions or not graphic. So was there a movie that you remember that had a really violent scene besides the one we're going to discuss in the next slide? And was the rest of the movie violent? And what about Avengers? Is Avengers violent? I mean, think about it. How many people are getting killed, beat up, flown, strewn, Iron Man, whatever? Don't really watch those movies, but I just know. I would think, yeah, after examining this class, yeah, it seems pretty violent, right? But we wouldn't consider it like a violent movie. We're not going to let anybody watch it. I mean, all kids are watching Avengers and things like that. So graphic scenes offend audiences and trigger criticism. Producers know this and curb the graphicness of the violence. So this scene in Kill Bill, I don't know if you guys remember the Quentin Tarantino Kill Bill, was so violent that they had to put it in black and white to appease the MP, the ratings for the movies. So they had to, it was so bloody and gory that in order to pass rated R, because once a movie's NC-17, it's really hard to get it distributed. So I'll show you here. He had to put it in black and white. Oh, sorry about that. I thought I'd change that. All right, let me just look for it here. Here's part of the scene. Sorry, guys, that's not the censored version. I'm trying to find the censored version. I just had it. Oops. All right, we'll just watch this.
So, Oren. Sure, but
This is the part here. They had to put it in black and white when it came out in theaters. This is the full color version. Yeah, we'll stop there. You can see how gory it was, and if you watch it in theaters or on DVD, it's in black and white to appease ratings. Not ratings. The rating of how violent the movie is. Do you guys know about Slender Man? So this is an actual case. If you don't know what Slender Man is kind of this. It's like a Momo, but from before. If you don't know what Momo is, it's this crazy fake like monster demon that supposedly lives in the woods, and it's a character that people always create online. And it's like a haunted tale, a new version. It's created on the internet. So I forgot what year this was. This happened. So in 2014, two girls went in the woods and killed. They were school-age girls. They killed one of their friends and said Slender Man made them do it. And it was a crazy case. They made a movie, and the movie had to cut most of the scenes and boil down because they said it was too violent. These kids didn't really know what they were doing. You guys should look that up. It's really crazy. I don't know. I think the girls had emotional problems. I never really followed up with that case, but it's interesting to see. And lastly, we're going to look at this X-Men poster here. So, sorry for the pop-up ad. This was a poster that was used for the X-Men movie, X-Men Apocalypse. And people said it promoted violence against women, and I agree with that. I mean, they could have used any other scene from the movie. Why would they use a woman being choked? So many scenes. They messed up there, and they should have people to tell them that. All right, moving on. Any Game of Thrones fans, there's tons and tons of violent scenes in Game of Thrones. Red Wedding, the Mountain Martell death scene, so many. And it's super violent. It's on HBO, and I think that's what makes part of the show appealing. Sadly. Well, I mean, goodness. And this is an article that I wanted to, these are quotes from a Washington Post article that goes into like the history of violence in media and the correlation between mass shootings. So I just want to read some of those quotes from the article, and the link is there. In the 1980s, the grit and counter narrative of the 70s gave way to mega action flicks inspired by the fallout from Vietnam, the end of the Cold War, and the early days on the war on terrorism. First Blood, which was released in 1982, and its sequels feature a former Medal of Honor recipient using a succession of extremely large machine guns and seemingly endless supply of ammunition. Popular movies such as The Terminator, Predator, and Die Hard, all released in the 80s, all scored major box office successes by employing the same model. Big guns, big muscles, and big explosions. Yet, for all the blood and gore featured in these movies, mass school shootings did not plague the 60s, 70s, 80s, or even the 90s. There was only a thing in the 2000s. And is a relatively recent problem, largely beginning after the 1999 massacre at the Columbine High School in Colorado. So their twisting of the history or ignorance of it allows them to avoid the uncomfortable truth. And they're talking about gun rights lobbyists here. Violence films have caused school shootings. Rather than, these tragedies have been propelled by a culture which portrays guns as a preferred solution to being wrong, threatened, or marginalized. Until we confront that, we'll never begin to solve this problem. So what do you think? I think this article is great in putting that correlation together and showing how, people weren't shooting that, and just the culture of gun rights. We need to have semi-automatic rifles and things like that. So one way that we don't realize that humor, that things are really violent, is they use humor to camouflage violence. And these are not violent. Those are not violent. Those are video games. It's a quote in the book. Let's go into Tom and Jerry.
Misadventures of E-Scoundrels almost always involve Tom Cat trying and usually failing to hunt down Jerry Mouse. Often, the feline will set up a complicated trap that backfires on him, or at least ends up with getting him hit with a hammer. Few cartoon all-stars do slapstick violence better than Tom and Jerry, which is one of the reasons why they've been honored with several Academy Awards. They're a truly timeless duo, entertaining generation after generation with their ongoing feud.
How considerate of the tornado to bring back the bed.
Number 6, The Ren and Stimpy Show.
Let's see what's number 1 here.
Remember this moment.
Number 1, Happy Tree Friends.
I don't even know what this is.
If you're wondering why these cute woodland creatures get to our top spot, you obviously haven't seen this show. This cartoon was born on the internet and follows a group of furry friends who live in a forest, and often find themselves in situations where they are, well, take a look for yourself.
So what do you guys think? Does Tom and Jerry make people become violent? I mean, for most of us, I never tried to hit my brother with a hammer because I knew that was really bad. But maybe there's some kids who have developmental disabilities and don't know that, or emotional disabilities and don't know that and have done that. I don't know. But for the most part, I think no. Also, I just remembered a cartoon when I was younger called Spawn, which is like a comic book thing. And they had it on HBO. And I used to think, oh, this is a cartoon. But my mom would not let me watch it. There was naked girls, there was sex, there was really bad violence. It was basically a graphic novel type thing. That was not for kids. And I want to watch some of the most, continuing the cartoon thing.
Often TV shows will push the limits on what they say and the jokes they make, even in kids' programming. Here are 10 inappropriate moments found in children's TV shows. Number 10, SpongeBob SquarePants. Watching porn. In SpongeBob SquarePants, SpongeBob is caught watching porn by his pet snail. The porn involves a sea anemone, wriggling back and forth as if it's making love. Although it's not easy for a child to tell what's happening, it's quite obvious, since SpongeBob quickly changes the station and stammers that he was just looking for a sports channel. Sounds just like what one would do when being caught by their boss scrolling Facebook page. Quickly change to the email or Google tab. Number 9. The Fairly Odd Parents. Allusion to masturbation. The Fairly Odd Parents is a popular show on Nickelodeon. One of the main characters is Timmy, who gets into numerous fights with his parents. There's a moment where he fights with his parents and says that he's going to take paper towels to his room alone, and he doesn't want disturbance. Why would a boy take paper towels with him to the bedroom and request for privacy? You got it. Timmy goes to masturbate. Number 8. Cow and Chicken. Homosexual innuendo. In Cow and Chicken, there is an episode where a bunch of butch ladies show up at a cow's house and start munching on the rug hungrily. Why would these ladies want to eat a piece of rug? Based on this behavior, it's okay to call them rug munchers. Well, if you didn't know, rug muncher is a derogatory name for lesbians. This is a clever way to insinuate a lesbian's moment. Number 7.
I don't know how they got that through.
Arthur avoids an anal probe. In this particular episode, Arthur and his friends write their own stories. Every individual story is animated based on another cartoon show. Arthur's tale is styled on South Park, an adult comedy animation. In this episode, based on South Park's Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, where Eric Cartman is kidnapped and anally violated by aliens, Arthur almost suffers the same ordeal. He's kidnapped by aliens, put in a spaceship, stripped, and just before he is raped, he is thrown out of the spaceship. Number 6. SpongeBob SquarePants. Patrick's Genius Showing.
Patrick gets to show his genius in episode 18 of season 1, namely Texas. In this moment, Patrick briefly experiences a flash of inspiration that SpongeBob notices. Excitedly, SpongeBob shouts, "Patrick, that's it! Your genius is showing!" Patrick confuses his genius for penis and hurriedly covers his crotch and asks SpongeBob, "Where?" Guess Patrick's genius is found in his penis. Number 5. Ren and Stimpy. Sawing Wood episode. This scene in Ren and Stimpy portrays gay sex. Although the show was well known for its sexual innuendos, the show's creators must have gone overboard this time. In this episode, Ren is seen cutting a piece of lumber placed on Stimpy's back using a handsaw. The only problem is that Ren does not use his hands to cut the lumber. Instead, the handsaw is attached to his waist. He stands behind Stimpy and thrusts back and forth to cut while gaining pace. Stimpy appears to enjoy this activity. After cutting the piece of wood, Ren's saw drops like a flaccid penis. There's nothing more to say here. Number 4. The Powerpuff Girls. Accidental pregnancy. As children,
All right,
we
let's
all
skip to
thought
the
we were
first one.
bored from Play Slug. This magazine imitates the human version Playboy, which contains pornographic content. The construction worker reading the racy magazine is also seen pulling his lever simultaneously, which could be me.
Wow, I never knew. Oh, I knew from the last semester, but before I saw this, I never knew any of that. All right, you guys can watch. I put that in the links. So humor removes the threat of violence. People feel something is violent. They feel a personal threat. Violence in a fantastic settings or sci-fi is perceived as non-violent because we think, hey, we're never going to be in that world. It's non-frightening and non-disturbing, but people felt opposite the closer it was to them in reality. So if you saw a show where there was a car crash and there was regular people living their life, then you would be more scared of that than probably a sci-fi thing. But we aren't concerned with acts of violent aggression where characters inflict emotional, psychological, or social harm in a non-physical way, and we need to look at that. Verbal violence is 3 times more present in the media than physical. A 2012 analysis of 50 most popular shows among 2 to 12-year-olds found that 92% contained some social aggression, on average 1 scene every 4 minutes. 1 scene of social aggression every 4 minutes. That's a lot. The average person sees 1 highly graphic violent scene per week, and this is the basis for the criticism. But people are not criticizing all the other violent acts, such as emotional violence. But the average person also sees 100 acts of violence that is sanitized or camouflaged with humor. Plus, they see another 200 to 300 acts of non-physical aggression, such as hate speech, harsh insults, put-downs, etc. There's actually far more violence in the media than what we think, and the public's narrow conception of violence is faulty. So filtering out harm. The irony is that the acts we filter out as not being violent are the ones that cause the most harm. When violence is presented in a non-offensive manner, people are not upset by it and they think it's okay. Repeated exposure to violence that doesn't show blood, gore, or people suffering leads to desensitization and is negative over time. Humor camouflage violence, trivializes violence, and the seriousness of consequences to victims. So we might think, oh, this is whatever. Somebody's being verbally abused. We don't think, oh, that's fine. You know, who cares on a show, such as a comedy show. And it doesn't really affect us as it would if we saw blood, gore, or something like that. But it does make us less sensitive to physical, emotional violence and put-downs. So cartoon characters get stabbed, beaten, burned, exploded, etc., and comes back the next scene. We also think fantasy is not realistic and people won't imitate, but children often will. The non-physical aggression. Non-physical acts of aggression are more likely to be imitated, such as verbal bullying, taunting, threatening, and embarrassing. So let me know, do you guys have younger siblings or cousins that have imitated those non-aggressive acts of violence? Hold on, let me go back. Non-physical acts of aggression, sorry. So we are not likely to imitate violence than we are robbing a bank, causing a shootout, and car chase on the highway. We're not likely to watch a movie and do that. But we're more likely to imitate characters that insult and verbal abuse in witty ways. Especially if you're Hispanic, your family is used to getting at you all the time. Social aggression is more imitable than physical and leads to more negative effects. So let's look at negative emotional effects that happen to kids. So in 2012 experiment, middle school kids were shown shows popular with tweens, which is the 18 to 14-year-old demographic, where serious social conflict was shown. Researchers found that habitual exposure was associated with persona schemata. It's what to expect from certain people, and expectations for less friendliness and bullying. They also had greater anxiety about future school. What I've heard and what makes a lot of sense is when we see the TV, we think that once we go to middle school, 8th grade, we're going to be bullied, or from high school. Does that happen? I mean, it didn't really happen with me. I was fine. And let me know what you guys think in the discussion. Does that whole media portrayal of being bullied from high school to middle school to high school, I mean, that's such a big thing in the TV shows and movies, but does it really happen? I was okay when I went to high school. Those who watch high conflict episodes anticipated more hostility. So we have vulnerable groups. People worry about criminals and children when it comes to media violence. So public worries that content portrayal of violence will teach these people how to behave violent and to motivate them. So let's look at rap music. I'm a big fan of rap music. I know some of you in the class are. Is rap music promoting violence? Who thinks that? Let me know in discussion. Some people say yes, and there's been some studies that show yes, they do. So a recent study by the Prevention Center, the Pacific Institute of Research and Evaluation in Berkeley, California, suggests that young people who listen to rap and hip hop are more likely to abuse alcohol and commit violent acts. So there's a study that showed that. I think it's more linked to alcoholism, which we'll go in a little bit. Some people say that rap is not violent. It's just a cause of society. The comparison would be if you went to war. If you're taking photos of war and describing war, you're not being violent. You're just showing your society. And, a lot of these people that come from these violent places, they're just rapping about what they know. Obviously, other people are BSing and they're not really true. Like Hempstead, is he from Hempstead or Long Island's Little Tecca? He's even admitted that he's not a gangster and he's just rapping what people want to hear. But other people like NWA, I don't know who else, Kendrick Lamar have said that they're not promoting violence. This is what actually goes on in their neighborhood, and they're just authors. So it's not only the U.S. where people are accusing rap of being violent and causing violence. We'll look at this video from London.
Streets and music is two different things. And then what the audience essentially do is saying, go on, do it until someone gets stabbed or shot.
It worked for music, and the way out it gave me like the options. I'd be doing road completely, like I'd just be on the road. I haven't been showed no other way. Big back, she know she attractive. He didn't want phone, but I slapped him. But look on the day, still acting. Gonna do no fucking best scratching. Look, his basic rules, there's no lacking. Active, back my neck and then scratching. Push it in and then twist it. Each the way I'm living this.
There's been a wave of killings amongst young people in London this year, and it's the UK's drill music scene which is in the spotlight, with a lot of focus on the content of the lyrics.
You want me nifty, phone applaud, I hate these snitches, swear to God, me strap still buried with the book, had to hide it cause it's hot.
Critics say artists are glamorizing drugs and gang violence amongst young people.
As I speak, gangs posting videos and music online that document, encourage and glamorize violence and goad and threaten others. And the repercussions can be deadly.
Like many people in the music scene, Croydon-based artist T-Face thinks drill music is being wrongfully blamed for violence on the streets.
Obviously, I'm hearing the speculation around people thinking that drill music is the cause when it's actually an escape route. All it's doing is televising it, it's telling you what's happening because you guys just don't know. It would make sense for the media to just go, yeah, look over there, there's crime, there's blacks, there's Hispanics or whatever. They're over there making this kind of music, and this is what's happening in those areas. So they're just pointing the finger, really.
I went to a university in Birmingham to visit criminologist Craig Pinkney. He did the UK's first report to why young people in gangs get into drill music.
I think media do definitely contribute to this idea and concept around perpetuating a lot of the violence because they air it on their programs. So what I'm saying is we have a lot of individuals that are in these industries that benefit off young people talking about their chaos. And when those young people go onto their platforms and go back to their communities and have to deal with those problems, those radio organizations don't have to deal with the consequences of what those individuals go through.
Croydon-based independent record label, Finesse Forever, manages some of the biggest names in the drill scene, from T-Face to Skengo and AM.
We managed some drill artists recently. They went on tour, and if you look at the demographic of the ethnicity that was there, it was like 70% white. So why, when I'm seeing all the list, the faces of all the dead people, why is it people of color? Do you know what I mean? So really and truly, it can't be drill music, because otherwise there'll be a hell of white kids stabbing up each other.
Exactly.
But there isn't.
Streets and music is two different things. 90% of the time, if for UK especially, it's not US where man just gets bland for no reason. Like 90 to 95% of the time, especially for the young people, they are dying because they're involved in something that they shouldn't be involved in. They want to be me, so they beat me. The way that I step is way too cheeky. Now get out instantly. Don't act.
If artists are being scrutinized for rapping about certain topics, why do they still put out content including this?
Some content needs to be heard. That's what I'm trying to say. Some people's truth, they've been through too much pain to say, no, I'm going to hide it from the world. They've got to a substantial amount of followers to tell these followers their story, not to hide and tell them about fairy tales and these things. That's not what they've been through. You know what I'm trying to say?
Gang members upload videos and content of their behaviors on social media platforms. They have what's called an audience, and their audiences are the ones that oftentimes perpetuate the violence. Someone uploads a disrespect, the audience say, oh, they start tagging individuals in from the other group that feels disrespected. Then that group puts something then again on Instagram or Snapchat, and then what you then have is people going backwards and forwards. And then what the audience essentially doing is saying, go on, do it, until someone gets stabbed or shot, or someone dies.
North London artist Poppy invited me to Tottenham to...
All right, let's move on. Let me know what you guys think in the discussion. Is rap music portraying violence or perpetrating it? Is they pushing it forward and letting people, pushing people to become violent? One of the things that I like the criminologist said was that the record labels and stuff, they put a lot of money behind all these rappers, and they're kind of removed from it. They want to, they want to like step away from it, but they want to help increase the sales and promote all this violence and sort of like disassociate themselves while profiting off of it. If we look at 6ix9ine, he was being very violent. He wasn't even who he says. He wasn't even a blood gang member. He joined it to get street cred and things like that. And ultimately, when it came down to it, he was not even a gangster. He had snitched. You saw the memes and things like that. And he's free right now due to coronavirus. So I wanted to talk to one of my best friend, Intan Ahmed. He's the executive editor at Genius. He's done a lot of hip hop journalism. He's written for Complex. He studied rap. He's been quoted in, I think, MSNBC about like rap music and politics and things like that. So I wanted to ask him what he thought about this. And this is a quote that he gave me. He said, in the 80s, crime in America was out of control, which is definitely true, as I shown in the previous class with those crime stats. And rap was in its infancy. In the 90s, crime went down in every single major American city, and the popularity of hip-hop exploded. So he thinks there's not really a correlation with that of crime and hip-hop, because hip-hop has grown. And it's white suburban kids were buying Dre's, The Chronic, and probably smoking weed to it, but they wasn't joining no Crips. Definitely true. If you go to a rap concert, it's a lot of white people. And it's the demographic. If you go to the Rolling Loud concerts or anything like that, you'll see it's full of suburban kids bumping the rap music. So it's not like, these people are not going to be doing these violent things. Sometimes they do, my friend Intano says, I think it does promote drugs and drinking. Yes. And I agree with him. Every rap music is full of drug lyrics, full of alcohol lyrics. You need to try the new, I showed you guys the Fabulous. You need to try this new liquor. You need to drink this new thing. You need to pop a Molly. You need to take a perk. All these things. And it's kind of like some of the songs, that's all they say. Like, can't these people be good without doing any drugs? Like, it's becoming too much, especially with the SoundCloud rappers and stuff. We have rappers that have died from drug overdoses. We have Lil Peep, Juice WRLD, and so they glamorize this lean pills, and it's killed them at a young age, tragically. So I think I don't think there is a problem with violence in rap music, but there definitely, my personal opinion, is one with drugs and rap music and alcohol. So for example, I'm more likely to listen to rap music, but I'm not going to want to fight anybody. I'm not going to want to be tough, but I will want to try whatever new liquor is in it. Think about all the songs, Pastor Crevassier, Henny, and all this, stuff. Is that in pop music? I don't think so. Let me know what you guys think in the discussion. Children. Many adults believe that children have not developed sufficient inhibitions for behaving in violent ways. Think about Think about when they see wrestling and fight each other, resulting in harm. It happens at dinner with my cousins. Here's one of the ways me and my cousins used to imitate. It was big when we were younger. The Rock and Stone Cold. We would do like these stupid moves, people's elbow, the move where the Rock does and puts his head between his legs and do Stone Cold Stunner. We would get hurt. We would get my aunts would be like, "Guys, stop this." I remember one time my cousins and I, we thought we were like in the cartoons. We went on the top of the bunk beds. We had towels and we jumped off and we thought that we could fly. Luckily, it was only the bunk bed, so we did fall. We got a little hurt, but we didn't get like tragically hurt. But this is all influenced by things that we were seeing. So let me know in the discussion what other violent or crazy things that you saw as a kid and try to imitate. So let's look at video games. Research actually says no. There's a lot into this article that goes into about video games and mass shootings. So it became a big topic after the Parkland shooting in 2018, and Trump said they needed to do a full examination on video games and things like that. So I'm going to skip the beginning of the article. There's some things that I want to go over. In 2005, in a 2005 essay for PBS, Henry Jenkins, a professor at the University of Southern California, said that juvenile crime in the United States was at a 30-year low, the large numbers of young people play video games. This is some of the same correlation that my friend Inson was making with rap music. Rap music is going up, video games are going up, but the crime in the cities is going low. So if there's a direct correlation, why aren't we seeing, okay, people are playing video games at an all-time high. Why isn't crime, why aren't the juvenile jails full? So according to a 2015 study by the Pew Research Center, 49% of American adults, roughly half of men and women, play video games, whether on a computer, TV, gaming console, or device like an iPad. So if you played Candy Crush or any of those games, whatever the game J-Lo is promoting, I don't know why she's doing that. If you play that game on your phone, then you play video games. So let's look at a society that really is big into video games. You have South Korea and Japan, and this study found that 60% of the population play video games in 2016 in Japan. That's huge. But almost no one was killed by a gun in Japan. Why? They have strong gun laws. Compared to Japan in 2014 had only 6 gun deaths, compared with insane 33,000 in the United States. A burst of new research began to clarify about violent video games. Playing the games does stir hostile urges and mildly aggressive behavior in the short term. However, youngsters who develop a gaming habit might have a small clash or two, but they're not likely to go out and do these mass shootings. So in Supreme Court, there was a ruling in 2011 where it was 7-2, and the Chief Justice wrote, psychological studies purporting to show a connection between exposure to violent video games and harmful effects on children do not prove that such exposure causes minors to act aggressively. I mean, what do you guys think? Again, maybe my cousins might do some silly thing in the house, but they're not going to go out and, hurt somebody, stab somebody, or things like that. I think it has a lot, what influences a lot is upbringing, psychological conditions, emotional conditions, behavioral conditions, and things like that. So it's not only these two groups, children and criminals, who are vulnerable to media messages. It's everybody. We don't think violence affects us. We think this is limited to aggressive behavior, since we can't recall acting aggressive after watching a violent media. But there's not only acting aggressively, there's a lot of other things that you might react by watching these aggressive things. So there are many types of media violence documented by research, some immediate and others long-term. One example is that people think crime is pervasive despite crime rates having gone down significantly since the 60s and 70s. The only type of crime that's gone up over the years is petty crime because people are walking around with their iPhones and cell phones and iPads. And that's opportunists are going to take their chance to snatch them and run away. This is the cause of TV shows. Why? We think crime is at all-time level because news focuses on crime. TV shows focus on crime. We have all those like SVU and all those shows that people like. But there's a lot more effects to that we have after seeing aggressive acts and things like that. So let's look at a few of them. When violence permeates the media year after year in all kinds of programming, it puts pressures on institutions such as the criminal justice system, the educational system, religion, and others. So I wanted to show you the most common one and one that I found a good example for. Let's look at number 7 over here. So one of the effects of violence in media is a temporary fear. Violence in films and on TV can produce intense fear. This fear reaction typically lasts for only a short period of time, but it can endure for several hours, days, or even longer. Has there been any media production that caused severe fear in you? Maybe you don't like clowns like it. Maybe you don't want to stand in the mirror when it's dark. And my good example here, I don't know if anybody you know the fantastic film franchise, being sarcastic, Final Destination. So here's a trailer for Final Destination 2, and I want you to put two and two together. I don't know if you guys ever seen this movie or this series. The first movie dealt with an airplane crash, and people were scared to fly, even though you're more likely to die on the road to the airport than on the plane. Next one dealt with like a carnival accident where the roller coaster flew off. This is insane, but let's watch this one, and I'll tell you guys what happened after this, or if you know. That's absolutely horrifying, and these big types of crashes do happen. If you Google them, you'll find them every once in a while, killing lots of people. But did you guys catch that scene with the truck with the wood? Yes. I'm never going to drive behind one of those things because I automatically, every time I see a truck with wood, I don't want to be behind that because I'm automatically thinking Final Destination, the wood's going to fall out, impale me, crash into my window. So hell no, I'm moving over, I'm speeding around, and that's an effect that I had from this movie. Let me know what other types of things that you've seen in movies or shows that scared you and made you change your behavior in real life, besides leaving the light on after seeing a scary movie. And something more drastic than that. So how to reduce violence in the media? It's not about reducing the number of exposures. It's about changing how these exposures are shown. But the way they are shown matters. If we sanitize violence, it leads viewers to become more desensitized. The glamorization of violence leads viewers to become attracted to it. And trivialization of violence for humor leads viewers to believe the risk of being punished is slight. But if portrayed in the context of morality, then it would teach people it's not acceptable, rarely justified, and causes serious harm to victims. So we have to change the way the media portrays violence. Honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. The media is making so much money. I was going to show you this video with Cameron and telling you about he's a street author and all that, but you can skip that. It's a classic. It's Bill O'Reilly versus Cameron, if you guys want to see that. Also, let me know in the discussion, has this topic opened your eyes about how violent the media really is? What can you do? Are you going to limit things that your younger siblings or family members see? Were you seeing any programs that you realize now, wow, that was crazy. Like me with the Spawn thing. I'm interested to watch it again now that I've recalled that. And I'm older. All right, guys. This is the last video lecture. I've enjoyed doing these things for you. Sorry we're not in class. I missed the back and forth. I really enjoy your discussion responses. They're very thoughtful. They make me laugh. They make me think of more examples. So I hope you enjoyed these. I tried to be as animated as I was in class and have the good examples, but I'm looking forward to seeing your projects and your papers. And I guess I'll see you for that class when we're live. Have a good one.